The sun sets over the quiet fields of Dunang, casting long, distorted shadows across the withered grass. In the center of this silence, a soul awakens to find itself trapped within a gaunt, straw-filled body. Panic sets in as the protagonist realizes he cannot move a single limb, his vision restricted to the narrow view of his unblinking eyes. Suddenly, a mechanical voice echoes in his mind, announcing the activation of the Fear Demon God system. The system explains that his survival depends on absorbing fear from living creatures to fuel his evolution. Footsteps break the silence as a young girl named Xiaolan runs into the yard, pursued by 3 aggressive men. The thugs kick open the flimsy gate, their lewd laughter filling the air as they corner their prey. One of the men, Abin, suddenly stops as he feels a cold gaze piercing through the back of his neck. He stares into the Scarecrow's lifeless eyes, unaware that the creature is actively harvesting his terror. A system notification pings, awarding the protagonist his first 10 points of fear. Frustrated and spooked, Abin kicks the Scarecrow over, sending it tumbling onto the dirt. As he walks away, Abin looks back and sees the Scarecrow's eyes have shifted to follow his every movement. The man's heart rate spikes, providing a flood of fear points that the protagonist greedily consumes. Another thug, a Ching, approaches to gouge out the Scarecrow's eyes, mocking his companion's cowardice. Just as the fingers are inches away, the Scarecrow's head snaps toward him with a savage glare. A Ching falls back in horror, his screams echoing as he scrambles away on his hands and knees. With enough fear points accumulated, the protagonist finally unlocks the Demon God physique. A mechanical grinding sound fills the air as the Scarecrow slowly forces itself to a standing position. The 3 thugs freeze in place, their minds unable to process the sight of a living prop. Without warning, the Scarecrow lunges, its straw arm sharpening into a deadly spike. The thatch arm pierces through the leader's chin, erupting from the top of his skull in a spray of red. The dying man struggles in the air, his gurgling cries providing a surge of fear to the evolving demon. The system confirms a massive gain of fear points, allowing the protagonist to unlock his next weapon. Multiple sharp straw tentacles erupt from the Scarecrow's other arm, writhing like poisonous snakes. Aching attempts to flee, but the straw tentacles lash out, snagging him by the waist. The tendrils pierce his chest in a dozen places, hoisting him up to join his fallen comrade. Abin and Xiaolan manage to open the gate, but the Scarecrow's gaze locks onto the final thug. The straw tentacles lunge forward, shredding Abin's internal organs before he can even scream. Xiaolan continues to run, her sanity slipping as she flees into the dark fields. The Scarecrow prepares to finish her, but he stops, realizing she is more valuable alive. He decides she will be the one to spread his legend, a living witness to the horror he has become. With 660 fear points remaining, the protagonist unlocks his 3rd skill, Death Hell. He tests the skill, replaying the gurgling death rattles of the thugs through his own jagged mouth. Feeling his strength grow, he upgrades his physique to level 2, feeling his straw body become as dense as iron. He takes his first steps out of the yard, leaving behind 3 twisted corpses as his first monuments. Hours later, a group of agents arrive at the scene, their faces turning pale at the sight of the carnage. They find traces of straw embedded in the wounds, confirming Xiaolan's impossible story. Far away, the protagonist feels a steady stream of fear points as the investigators realize the truth. He realizes that the more people know about him, the more powerful he will become. The legend of the Fear Demon God has officially begun, and no soul is safe from his harvest. The Scarecrow stood at the edge of the paved highway, watching the distant city lights flicker like dying stars. He felt the hum of the Fear Demon God system vibrating within his hollow chest cavity. Each step he took on the asphalt made a dry, scratching sound like dead leaves skittering over a grave. He needed more than just local fear, he needed a stage large enough to feed his growing hunger. In a dimly lit apartment complex, a popular paranormal streamer named Leo was preparing his latest stunt. Leo laughed at his chat, claiming that ghosts were nothing more than glitches in the human mind. Shadows began to stretch and warp in the corners of the room as the Scarecrow drew near. Outside the window, a tall, gaunt figure stood perfectly still on a balcony where no human should be. Leo noticed a sudden drop in the room's temperature, his breath turning into a fine white mist. The chat feed scrolled at a frantic pace as viewers pointed out the face pressed against the glass. A burlap mask with jagged, stitched lips was illuminated for a split second by a passing car's headlights. Leo slowly turned his head, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The glass shattered inward with a deafening crack, spraying shards across the expensive gaming equipment. The Scarecrow stepped through the wreckage, his elongated limbs twitching with supernatural energy. Thousands of live viewers watched in stunned silence as the urban legend manifested in real time. Leo tried to scream, but a thick, dry vine of straw lunged forward and wrapped around his throat. The Scarecrow tilted its head, a hollow sound like wind through a cave emanating from its chest. Fear points flooded the system interface, the numbers ticking upward at an astronomical rate. With a sudden surge of power, the creature's fingers transformed into razor-sharp wooden claws. The camera captured every detail of the host's demise as the creature claimed its prize. Blood splattered across the lens, blurring the image into a crimson haze. The stream didn't end. It remained active, broadcasting the sound of the Scarecrow's wet, heavy breathing across the city. People stared at their phones in horror, unable to look away from the nightmare. The protagonist felt his form shifting and expanding as the collective terror of millions nourished him. He was no longer just a field guardian, he was becoming a god of the modern age. Miles away, at the Special Affairs Bureau, alarms began to blare in the high-security monitoring room. Agents scrambled to trace the signal, but the source seemed to be distorting the very fabric of the internet. A high-ranking officer stared at the frozen frame of the Scarecrow's mask and felt a cold sweat. Back in the apartment, the Scarecrow picked up the streaming camera with a slow, deliberate movement. He brought the lens close to his dead, glowing eyes, staring directly into the souls of the viewers. "I'm coming for you all," he seemed to signal without speaking a word. The live stream finally cut to black, leaving millions in a state of hysterical panic. The Scarecrow vanished from the apartment before the first police sirens could be heard. He was now moving through the shadows of the alleyways, invisible to the mundane eye. Every shadow in the city now felt like a potential hiding place for the monster. The system alerted him that his next evolution was nearing completion. He felt a new ability manifesting, the power to manipulate the fears of those who even thought of him. In a nearby park, a young couple huddled together, paralyzed by the feeling of being watched. A single piece of straw drifted down from the trees, landing softly on the girl's shoulder. They looked up to see a pair of yellow eyes burning in the canopy of the oak tree. Their screams were cut short as the evolution process reached its peak, releasing a wave of dark energy. The Special Affairs Bureau issued a Level 3 supernatural alert across the entire district. Armed spirit binders were dispatched, but they had no idea they were walking into a trap. The Scarecrow watched them from the heights, his body now covered in intricate glowing runes of fear. He had successfully turned the city into his personal hunting ground, and the harvest had only just begun. As the elite binders entered the park, the ground began to sprout hundreds of sharpened wooden stakes. A voice, multi-tonal and distorted, echoed through the binders' communication headsets. "Welcome to my world," the voice rasped, followed by a chilling, rhythmic laughter. Suddenly, the strongest binder in the unit felt his own shadow detach itself from the ground. The shadow took the form of the Scarecrow, raising a spectral claw to strike. Just as the strike was about to land, the Scarecrow sensed a presence far more powerful than the binders approaching. A lone figure in a white robe stood at the entrance of the park, holding a sword that bled pure light. The Scarecrow's glowing eyes narrowed as the system flashed a high-level threat warning. The true battle between the demon god and the world's protectors was about to begin, but who was hunting whom? The city streets went silent as the Special Affairs Bureau cordoned off the entire district. Captain Lin stepped out of the command vehicle, his eyes scanning the rooftops for any movement. High above on a skyscraper ledge, the Scarecrow watched the humans scramble like ants below him. The system pinged in his mind, showing a massive spike in fear points coming from the nearby crowds. Lin ordered his men to deploy the spectral net, a high-tech barrier designed to trap high-level spirits. A low, gravelly chuckle vibrated through the air, though no source could be seen. One of the junior binders pointed upward as a massive shadow detached itself from the building. the Scarecrow slammed into the pavement with enough force to crack the concrete. The soldiers hesitated, their fingers trembling against the triggers of their spirit rifles. The Scarecrow stood upright, its joints creaking like a dry wooden gate in the wind. Captain Lin drew his runic blade, the metal humming with a holy blue light. The creature tilted its head, mimicking the human's defensive posture with disturbing accuracy. "Fire on my command," Lin shouted as the air began to freeze around them. A barrage of spiritual energy bolts streaked toward the Scarecrow, illuminating the dark street. Instead of dodging, the Scarecrow opened its mouth wide, revealing a swirling black vortex of fear energy. The projectiles were sucked into the creature's maw, only to be converted into raw power for the system. A notification appeared in the protagonist's vision announcing a new skill, Shadow Blink. In the blink of an eye, the Scarecrow vanished, leaving only a puff of black straw behind. He reappeared directly behind the nearest squad of soldiers, his claws already extended. With a single sweep of his hand, he tore through their armor as if it were wet paper. Captain Lin charged forward, his sword cutting a trail of light through the darkness. The Scarecrow blocked the strike with its forearm, the holy blade struggling to cut through the cursed wood. "You have a lot of fear for a hero," the Scarecrow whispered in a voice like grinding stones. Lin kicked the creature back and threw a handful of purification salt into its eyes. The Scarecrow hissed as the salt burned its burlap skin, momentarily blinding it. Seizing the moment, the rest of the binders unleashed a combined spiritual strike. The ground exploded in a pillar of light, but the Scarecrow stood at the center, evolving further. Its form began to liquefy, turning into a swarm of thousands of black crows with red eyes. The birds swarmed the soldiers, pecking at their eyes and the gaps in their tactical suits. Captain Lin tried to swing his sword, but the sheer number of crows overwhelmed his vision. From the mass of birds, the Scarecrow reformed, now holding Lin by the throat. "You are the best they had, and you are nothing," the protagonist thought, feeling the surge of XP. With a final squeeze, the captain's runic sword fell to the ground, its light extinguishing forever. The remaining soldiers fled into the night, their screams echoing through the empty skyscrapers. The system announced the final evolution to the Fear Demon God rank. The Scarecrow's body grew even larger, wings of shadow erupting from its back to blot out the moon. He looked at the cameras still filming from the news helicopters circling above. To the millions watching, he raised a single clawed finger to his mouth in a shushing gesture. The world would never be the same, but for the man inside the straw, he was finally home. The legend of the Fear Scarecrow was now complete, and the age of the demon god had truly begun.
Chập điện. Thầy xem tay nên phải rất cẩn thận trong quá trình. Cái này cái bộ này mình lên được, ngay sau này mình kiếm điện này, mình muốn một bộ này mình lên được khoảng 9 tấn rồi. Đây là 9 tấn nữa, vào đây là khi mình làm mình đây á, mình đo mà không đủ đó là mình sẽ lên 9 tấn nữa. Đây là